during the Jasper wildfires last July, one of our early users was in the backcountry, and she and her family was the only person that received an alert issued by Parks Canada in the backcountry because she had the device. And we picked up the alert issued by the town and Parks Canada and delivered it to her.
Welcome to the BC Search and Rescue Association's AdventureSmart Expert Webinar Series.
JS is a retired Canadian federal government professional with a long career in public safety, risk, and emergency management. A lifelong outdoor enthusiast, JS has seen firsthand how technology is transforming safety in the backcountry. 4 years ago, he founded a company focused on using satellite communication to protect people from severe weather, flash floods, wildfires, and other risks in remote areas. Today, he's recognized as a subject matter expert in satellite-based outdoor safety and recently authored an article for the U.S. National Weather Service on how to better prepare for severe weather while exploring the outdoors. I think we're in good hands tonight. I know we're in good hands tonight, and I'd like to pass the stage over to JS. Welcome.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Sandra. Um, what a great introduction. And I'm so honored to be here and to join the BC Adventure Smart community. I've attended so many of the seminars in the past. They've always been great resources for myself. So to be here as, and I'll use quotation marks, an expert, I'll try to give you some food for thought and some stuff to reflect upon, specifically around emerging technology and severe weather in the outdoors. But first, let me acknowledge that I'm based in Winnipeg. I'm Winnipeg tonight on Treaty 1 lands, the original territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Lakota, and Dene people, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. And while I'm always a little bit jealous of the BC backyard, the backyard in Manitoba and our first Indigenous lands are certainly a treat to recreate in. I'm going to focus our conversation tonight around severe weather and then more in the back end talk a little bit about emerging tech from a safety perspective and more specifically an outdoor remote area safety perspective. You've done a great job introducing me, Sandra. So I'm going to kind of give you a really quick introduction to myself, but also to the company that I founded 4 years ago, Adiona Alert, without being too salesy. What I will add to the introduction is that I'm a nerd. I've always been a nerd, and I've been a nerd in the outdoors, which is a weird combination. If you think of your friend, we all have a friend that's like the safety Steve or safety Dave. I probably fall in that category. Please don't hold it against me. I try not to wear my propeller head cap too often. But I'm deeply committed to safety. I've been all my life, all my professional career. And I still look at what I do as an outdoor adventurer with a safety lens on a regular basis. And then about 5 years ago, I found myself in Cape Scott Provincial Park. Many of you probably know the area at the very north end of Vancouver Island on a 4 or 5 day trip through the park. Really remote area, absolutely stunningly beautiful. I'm a paddler. I'm a nerd, so I had my marine handheld radio, I had an inReach, I had my smartphone. I thought I had the world under control. And then on day 2 or 3, I realized that if there'd been a tsunami warning or another severe weather emergency, I probably wouldn't have known about it. And we can argue that marine radio should have helped me there. But there was no real way for me to get a reliable push to me alert about an imminent safety risk. So when I got back to civilization after a warm shower and a beer, I decided to take the Google steering wheel and look for a solution like that and couldn't find one. So we decided that we would try to tackle and develop a solution around that. And that's how Adiona Alert was born. What we've done, so we've spent about 3 years doing some research and development to come up with some technology around how do we deliver an alert to people over the satellite messenger they already carry. And we'll talk a little bit more about satellite technology. while monitoring the feeds or the alerts issued by 3,000 plus agencies in Canada and the US, primarily Environment Canada and the National Weather Service, but down to the local level, community, provincial, state, and federal level on both sides of the border. When they issue an alert in their view that is important to a local visitor or resident, we take that alert, and if you're in the area, we'll push the alert to the device you already carry. So we tested it for about a year with a small group of early users and our own small fleet of communicators, and we came up with a really reliable solution. We started making it publicly available last year on a subscription base, and I'm happy to answer some questions around that. And by now, we've issued about 10,000 alerts throughout Canada and the US. Everything from the normal severe weather, severe thunderstorms, tsunami warnings, to amber alerts, dangerous animal alerts, which are pretty common in Montana, and drinking water advisories. And one alert that you may be interested in reading a little bit more about, and that was really important for us, is during the Jasper wildfires last July. One of our early users was in the backcountry, and she and her family was the only person that received an alert issued by Parks Canada in the backcountry, because she had the device, and we picked up the alert issued by the town and Parks Canada and delivered it to her. You can read more about that. I read an article on our website. I think Scott just put the link in the comments in the Q&A. A little bit more. We're partners with ZOLEO. They're actually partners to AdventureSmart for this series. This is a little ZOLEO satellite communicator. We'll talk a couple more times about this. They've been great partners of ours, and they've really worked with us to make sure that the technology they use and our needs were well matched, so we can deliver reliably alerts to ZOLEO as well as other devices. And we're also partnered with the National Weather Service Weather Ready Nation program in the US, which led to the article that Sandra mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So our objective tonight, first, I'm going to try to share my perspective around severe weather safety and the emerging technology around it. We're going to talk a little bit about how I can challenge you, hopefully, to reflect, a weird bar there, to reflect on your own readiness. I've come to these seminars to really make sure to challenge myself that I had the right tools, I had the right perspective, I had the right information. Hopefully, you're going to walk away with from the session tonight with a little bit more on reflecting how you're severe weather ready. And then we're going to explore emerging tech and get past some of the hype around satellite communication, because it's a big topic. There's been lots of marketing, lots of discussion, but I'm going to give you my perspective. So where do I come from? Well, after 5 years of working with severe weather alerts and satellite technology, and particularly with the outdoor tech companies and the satellite companies closely, ZOLEO, and as an outsider, Garmin, we're a really, really small flea on a big elephant that Garmin is. I've really gotten to understand, I think, the businesses that are around the satellite communication technology. We've tested some of the technology we'll talk about later, and hopefully I'll give you some of that insight. And I still really approach safety as a public service. I don't want to be too salesy, but we're really trying to enhance the quality of the alerts that are issued in remote areas by highlighting the technology that's coming out of there. And we're using a public infrastructure. So anybody else that wanted to compete with us or had a better way of solving the solution and pulling the information from the public infrastructure that in the US is maintained by FEMA and in Canada by public safety, could do the same thing or better than what we're doing. So let's advance your safety, my safety when we're in the outdoors by promoting the use of technology to communicate with outdoor users. So severe weather and the outdoors. Sandra mentioned that about a year ago, I was asked by the National Weather Service to write an article for them about outdoor summer weather safety. And I talked about bears. And probably like some of you, the people at the National Weather Service at first were like, you're writing an article for the National Weather Service, right? You want to talk about bears? Well, let me tell you why I want to talk about bears and why the comparison with bears is so important. In 2023, lightning killed 14 people. Flash flooding killed 79, 93 in wildfires. And these are US statistics from 23. Combining the stats or getting the statistics for the Canadian market's a little more complicated, but it gives you a really good perspective. In the same year, only 4 people were killed by bears in 2023, including 2 in Canada. Sadly, the 2 people in Jasper National Park that died after a bear attack. And yet, we carry bear spray, we have bear closures, we're bear aware, we take bear training. There's a whole slew of things that come to the front of mind when we're in the outdoors around bears. And yet, 14 people died in lightning. I know, I'm sure I'll plug a future seminar, but you've got an expert from the National Weather Service that's going to join you in one of the later seminars to specifically talk about lightning. But I think we neglect severe weather. And not to say that we pay too much attention to bears and bear safety. I don't want you to stop paying attention and being bear aware. In fact, not only do we pay the price when we're not bear aware, but unfortunately, the bears probably pay a greater price than we do. But I don't think we do enough around severe weather. So severe weather and the resulting environmental risk is wildfire, severe weather, probably, maybe not. Are without a doubt increasing in frequency, and the impact that they have on our day-to-day life is increasing. And climate change is without a doubt a significant factor behind that. It's not the only factor. We keep on some of our lifestyle, some of our decisions, some of our where our adventures are taking us are also stretching the envelope and leading to higher impacts from severe weather. But regardless, I think we'd all agree that the impact of severe weather is increasing in our lives. And I think we have to be really conscious about that. So how do you prepare for severe weather? Well, the best way to be safe from severe weather is really simple. It's to avoid it, right? If you're not there when severe weather comes through, you're probably safer than when severe weather comes through. So cancel your trip. Simply cancel it. Change your plans. Start early. Changing plans can be changing the location you're going to visit, multi-day visit. If you're in a hub and spoke, adventure where you can come back to home base camp every night, select a different adventure for that day and keep the original adventure you had planned for a following day where the weather might be more favorable. Start early during the summer season. As the risk of severe thunderstorm increases typically later in the day and overnight, change the schedule a little bit so that you will be at a safe place and settled in earlier in the day, and you can avoid that severe thunderstorm later in the afternoon. For our through hikers and our multi-day adventurers, take a 0 day. On through hikes, you need a 0 day. You're going to take a 0 day at some point in time. Keep in mind the weather when you start planning your days, and you look for 0 days for recovery days. And obviously avoid peaks, low-lying areas, because lightning, flash flooding is more prone to get you in trouble in those areas.
I'm going to jump in here with just a bit of a question
Of
on
course.
that. When it comes to thunderstorms, they tend to be pop-up things, and often you don't know about them until, like, I might start off the day thinking it's going to be fine. I go, okay, yeah, you know what? There might be some convective weather in the afternoon because it's going to get hot, and if I'm really good at looking at my windy app, I might be able to tell that there might be a model, one of the 5 models that are available for that area, that might be telling me that there might be a problem. But I'm not going to be staring at that windy app all the time, and the windy app isn't going to be available in most of the places that I am. So I wonder how much planning we can do. Like when I'm looking, I go camping every weekend.
Yep.
And as a part of going camping every weekend, I make sure to plan out where I'm going to go. But I do that.
Oh, we just lost your audio, Scott.
We just lost your audio,
Sorry,
Scott.
there we go.
Okay.
Because I want to go to places where there's no rain or anything like that. And so on Thursday evening, it's when we go ahead and we start looking at our planning thing. And at that point in time, I'm looking at a 48-hour model that is a high resolution rapid refresh model that works for that particular area and that side of the mountain and stuff like that, right? But again, that's only a 48-hour window, and it's even that isn't perfect. So I'm wondering how, like, planning ahead. I think we should be planning for all events, but I'm wondering how well we can plan ahead based on the information that we have. And like I said, one side of the mountain it could be you could have rain, the other side of the mountain might not be.
There's no doubt, and we'll talk a little bit more about planning, trip planning, and some training components. And I'm going to put training in quotation marks around that. But I think the challenge you're raising is a really valid one. I think there are simple things you can do, and then there's the rest of the piece of the pie that you just have to accept that you may or may not know. And we'll talk about weather watches and why weather watches, particularly for those of us who spend time in the outdoors, are so important. And it goes a bit to your 24 or 48-hour discussion. But let's hang tight, and I think we can explore that.
I'm jumping ahead.
It's all
Sorry.
good. It's almost as if we'd practiced that, but it's a super good question. So even with the best of planning, to your point, Scott, things can go sideways. So take action. I'm not going to dwell into the very specifics around, what should you do around lightning. I really encourage you to attend the National Weather Service Lightning. I should have included that link there's an Outside Magazine article about everything we know about lightning we're wrong about. So that article is great. I'm sure you can find it. And the experts from the National Weather Service will really help you. But balls of your feet and all that stuff, probably not as valuable as you think. So when it happens, take action and take shelter, and understanding that taking shelter in remote areas can be challenging, and don't delay. If you're stranded or injured, call for help. And I'm sure Scott and Sandra can vouch for this. If you think you're going to need a rescue, don't wait. We'll talk about some of the features that ZOLEO introduced with their device, but let's get ahead of having to call at 7:30 or 9 o'clock in the evening because you're really in a pickle. If you think you're in trouble, get ahead of this, make your situation easier and the rescue from your volunteer rescuer easier. Let's look at your weather readiness using the 3 Ts, using the AdventureSmart essential 3 Ts, because I think it's a great structure, and I'd be a fool not to bring it into this conversation. Trip planning, and you've teased on this already, Scott. Weather forecasts. Weather forecasts 24, 48 hours is really valuable. But even in the week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of a trip, particularly in those areas you're not as familiar with, or for the longer trips. Days leading to the event, really valuable. The day before, even more valuable, because it really starts to allow you to figure out, is this going to be a good weekend to do what I'm planning to do? Is this week going to be a good week to do that hike in the desert if you're going south to one of the many desertic areas that we've got to explore? If it's a new region or area, do your research. And by your research, we're in the age of the internet. Don't trust everything you read. Validate what you find on the internet. But we have a unique opportunity to get insight from locals and from various people who have explored those areas. So really appreciate, if you're going to the Sierras in California, the weather is not going to be the same as LA or San Diego. Understand those differences. If you're going into an area that's prone to flash flooding, really understand what those areas are from the locals or from your research. And by locals, there's a whole variety of people you can rely on. The park rangers, provincially or federally, are great resources, or other public land managers. every not every, but many visitor centers, hotels, purveyors, equipment rental companies, the people who ferry you to the trailhead, they all will either have access or even post the current weather forecast and have incredible insight on what the local weather is. Don't get caught flat-footed. Of course, now that Sandra said that, 95% of the people who call for search and rescue are local within reason and maybe a little overconfident, maybe this part is not as important, but I wouldn't neglect it. Really appreciate a new region or new area that you're exploring. From a training perspective, I don't think you should become a meteorologist. I don't think it's necessary. Scott's talked a little bit about understanding the weather and learning the weather patterns or appreciating the weather patterns. But I'm going to tell you, you can't just watch the weather. We all have a variety of skills and experience. We all like to think that we can kind of interpret, and there's definitely some reading and some research. Environment Canada and the National Weather Service have incredible resources around that. But there's just some unique particular things that are either elevation or coastal related or weather systems that experienced forecasters and their really advanced models can do way better at than we can just by watching the weather. So get yourself a bit of information, get familiar with it, really understand what the severe weather alerts mean and the risks and what you can do to protect yourself when a severe weather alert is issued. And we talked a little bit about that when Scott asked this question, but really understand the differences between a watch and a warning. And that's where if a severe thunderstorm warning is issued, that means that the conditions are imminent or occurring. They're happening right now. If you're in the outdoors, if you're on a ridge, a warning is still good, it's still valuable, but it may not be as valuable as the watch, which is generally issued 6, 12, 16, 24 hours earlier. So while sometimes we tend to dismiss watches because the likelihood of impact to us is lower, so there's not a certainty is not as important, really understand that when a watch is issued, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it really gives you an opportunity to understand what's coming your way, how likely is it, what period of the day is it going to happen, and how can you change your plans. So back to your question a little bit, Scott, there's not a watch or warning every time a thunderstorm comes across the area you're in, but the National Weather Service and Environment Canada do a really good job of issuing watches and warning, even in remote areas. And I don't know if I included the link to remote areas, to an article about remote areas and forecasting, but like even if there's 7 residents in an area, the weather forecaster will still do the analysis. They will still issue the watch or warning. So if you're in an area, and mountains make a bit of a difference, where an experienced local forecaster believes that a watch should be issued, they'll issue it. And it doesn't mean that you will see a severe thunderstorm or whatever else the watch is issued for, but it gives you a chance to really prepare and start making plans. If you're in a party, making agreements and discussing with the rest of your party what you're going to do before you leave and once you've left should a thunderstorm occur. So watches are really important. And most recently, I would really encourage you to spend some time to think and educate yourself around extreme heat and air quality. I don't need to tell folks in BC and Alberta how the wildfire season has changed. I'm not sure there's a wildfire season anymore. It just seems like the wildfire activity is increasing in length, increasing in severity, and we're even seeing some wildfires that are staying active during the winter, not active above ground, but in the root system. So that has a direct impact on air quality. Extreme heat has a real impact on people. There's a lot of work in the weather alert world to do a better job explaining extreme heat or high heat risks to people. So understand your limits, understand the physiology of how extremely heat affects you, And again, both Environment Canada and the National Weather Service has some really, really good general information around that world. Now, taking the essentials, and I'm not going to talk about the essentials in a broad perspective. I'm going to focus around weather or severe weather because AdventureSmart has a ton of resources around what the essentials are. But I think there's some things you can do around the essentials that are important from a weather perspective. Obviously, cold weather gear, wet weather gear, the proper gear for the weather conditions, and if we go back to planning, that you are going to see or could see at that time of year is really important. Feel like I'm preaching a little bit, but extended stay into the backcountry that you didn't expect because you got injured, because weather trapped you, whatever reason, but making sure that you've got the right equipment are obviously important from a weather perspective. But I think an important essential to consider now is how are you going to get weather information? And my iPhone does a pretty good job, and there's probably 17,000 different weather apps that you can download. Whatever app you decide to use, your smartphone can do a good job giving you the basic information about the weather forecast, and including for some apps, watches and warnings. But they've got limitations. They got a battery life. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And obviously, if you're beyond self-service, they can't help you much. So that's one essential to consider. FRS or GRMS radio, this happens to be a marine radio that has the GRMS functions. You may already have a radio like this, has a weather function. Some of them, it's just a basic, you can get the weather channel, the Environment Canada weather radio channel, the National Weather Service, and you can listen to the forecast and current conditions and if they issue alerts. Others have even fancy features that will buzz or bother you when a weather alert is issued. But if you don't know how to use it, don't set it, don't activate it, not going to work. And obviously topography has some challenges with handheld radios, but you may already have a way to get a weather forecast. And satellite communicators, I've already talked about the ZOLEO, the Garmin inReach, and I'm a big fan, obviously, of those, partly because I have a vested interest, but also because of some of the services they provide. They allow you to pull forecast. So that's a way to get a weather forecast, even if you're in the backcountry.
I'm just gonna tell you a quick thing here. I had a friend who went up into Lake Superior, and when he was up there, he said, "Oh, I'm going to have my inReach with me. Would you mind sending me forecasts every day?" So because I guess it's an extra cost or something like that. So I kept an eye on it. I subscribed to alerts for the area myself, and then when I got an alert in town, I would go and I would copy that alert and then send it to him, and he would get it on his inReach. And I did that for 2 weeks. I'm assuming that you probably don't have a legion of Scott Montagues ready to perform that service. But that was something that I did myself.
That's a pretty committed emergency contact / weather reporter.
And let's be careful, because if too many people take advantage of that, at one point Scott might start getting confused or overwhelmed by the number of requests. But since you've offered, I may give you a call later. So the weather radio is an important tool. You may already have it. We'll talk a little about satellite tech or satellite comms, and I'll give you a quick overview around that. But these devices do a really good job pulling a forecast. You're right. For some plans, if you're at a really, really low tier plan where everything costs you more than just calling the SOS, requesting a forecast is going to cost you. But I think it would have cost your friend to receive the forecast, the Scott Montague forecast. So, I'm not sure which one you trust more.
Well, this was also 10 years ago. So
Okay,
technology and the plans probably have varied.
They may very well have. So on the SATCOM side, there's a whole bunch of services. There's satellite phones. There's PLBs, personal locator beacons, and EPIRBs. There's personal satellite communicators, these little devices. We'll talk a little bit about Starlink and generally low orbit satellite networks. And satellite to cellular, which is getting lots of press, lots of coverage, partly rightfully so. But I think it's important to get to, to really understand what's there. On the satellite phone front, absolutely valuable for some, but it's costly to acquire, costly to use. Those of you who are old enough to remember the $1.25 or $2 a minute cell phone plans, that's still the world in satellite phones. They don't really provide tracking. We'll talk about the importance of tracking and push communication as we go on. And you can send a text message to a sat phone. You can call them, so I guess that's a form of push communication. But tracking and push communication is definitely not their strong suit. And for the vast majority of us, it's not really a good solution. PLBs, EPIRBs, PLBs, personal locator beacons, the EPIRB, the equivalent in the marine world, and ELTs in the aviation world. Without a doubt, a reliable and a relatively inexpensive solution. No monthly costs, but there's some downsides after that. They're largely one-way communication, one-way except some of the newer models at least will give you a confirmation that your SOS message was sent and received, and so, as a second step, sometimes received. There's some really early technology where you can start answering pre-prepared or pre-sorted questions with pre-prepared, pre-sorted answers to help enhance the information available to a rescue coordination center with some of the newer technology around PLBs. But really, it's largely a one-way communication. And tracking is only once you've triggered the SOS, and no push communication. And I'm sorry to beat on the tracking and no SOS, tracking and no push communication, but I'll come back and explain to you a bit my logic behind that. Personal satellite communicators, relatively inexpensive. If I'm not mistaken, BC AdventureSmart, in cooperation with ZOLEO, is actually giving one away tonight and every other seminar. So it's really inexpensive if you happen to be the winner. There is a monthly cost. There's a range of options there for you. They're all tracking capable, and the majority of them, or some of them, are two-way communication capable and push communication capable. The exception there is most of the Spot devices. Only one or two models from the Spot devices have two-way communication, which is not the case with the vast majority of the Iridium-based device, the Garmin inReach, the ZOLEO, Bivy Stick, and a few other providers. And those are features that I think are important to keep in mind. And before I leave personal satellite communicators, I'll give you an example of two-way communication and an innovative solution that ZOLEO introduced. With a ZOLEO device, not only can you trigger an SOS, get into a conversation with the rescue coordination center that is going to trigger your rescue, but they also have a service where you can contact a medical professional pre-SOS and discuss with them your concerns. Nausea, you're vomiting, you have a hip injury, and you're really concerned about your mobility. Now, instead of wondering whether you should trigger the SOS or not, before you trigger the SOS, you can reach the medical professional, have a conversation, and they will give you their professional opinion about whether this is an emergency, or whether you can spend the night, take it easy on the way out, or whether you need a helicopter ride to get you out of a predicament. Low orbit satellite internet is one of the last areas we're going to talk about from a satellite connectivity perspective. That's largely Starlink today, but Amazon and their Project Kuiper is a big competitor to Starlink. In the future, they've launched their first series of satellite. Their business plan is primarily focused around providing service to businesses in the next year or so. But the early indications is that they will essentially be toe-to-toe with Starlink, except for the size of the constellation, once they're up and started and running publicly, and will have comparable offerings to Starlink. The beauty is that it provides high-speed connectivity and it's extending connectivity to where it wasn't possible or affordable in the past. So if you live in a remote area, as you know, the days of ExplorerNet or dial-up, while your friends in an urban area had the fancy versions of DSL and cable high-speed. Starlink has really upset the balance that way. It's affordable, relatively accessible, and it's so rapidly evolving. When we started talking to people about satellite connectivity in the outdoors, I was talking about in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years. And Starlink and Elon Musk and his merry men and women have taught me to say, well, 3 years, maybe 18 months. Who knows what they're going to come up next week. But it's got some downsides. Not quite portable. Many of you probably have seen some pictures of a Starlink Mini with batteries on the top of a backpack or on the deck of a raft or kayak. I've seen pictures. I haven't run into any in the wild. I don't know if it's just nerds that like to show their gears or want to test things, or if it's really happening. But it's getting closer. But it's not something that you and I would take on an average outing. And then there's the topic of conversation that I probably hear from users or potential users the most, which is satellite to cellular phone. What many of us know as the Starlink T-Mobile partnership or the Starlink Rogers partnership. There are other players, Strigo, AST. Every cellular phone provider, service provider in Canada and the US and around the world is working really hard at introducing satellite directly to cellular phones. They're doing some amazing things, but a lot of what we're seeing is either marketing or for the purpose of investors. When you see Starlink announce with great fanfare that they finally did a voice call over Starlink T-Mobile connectivity, you don't know if it was the third call, the seventh call, the 700th call before they finally got one to go through. What I can tell you is from our early tests with Starlink T-Mobile, because we've tested it on a couple of devices on a couple of occasions. It's impressive when it works. It's confusing often when it works, and it's what I would have expected when it doesn't work. And for our own safety as a primary means of communication in backcountry, probably not a great solution. Apple, Google, Samsung are all getting into that space on their own. To give you a sense, I've lost track, but I know that Apple has invested probably over $2 billion with a B dollars in Globalstar, the folks that have the satellite phone and global spot network. They're not messing around. That's not going away. They're making significant investments, and that's what's bringing 3 years ago SOS on the newest iPhone, to roadside assistance last year, and to two-way texting this year. It's exciting, it's impressive, but it's rapidly evolving and at times very confusing. The good news is it's affordable and accessible. We already have an iPhone. Many of you have a latest iPhone that would work. It does provide two-way communication where you can send and receive messages, but it's somewhat unreliable at push communication at best. Not quite as universal as it's being marketed. And I have a big question on reliability. That may change in time, but I will tell you, and don't take my word for it, one of the folks in the Ethernets that probably has the best reviews in that topic and that is the most neutral is Chris Hazard, Hiking Guy, who has a number of reviews about the various solutions, whether it's Starlink, Apple, and most recently Google Pixel. It works. There's no doubt that it works under the right circumstances. Sometimes you have to point your phone. Sometimes you can leave it horizontal. The challenge that I've seen the most often, the challenge I've experienced was that because there's different technologies, sometimes you think your message went through and it went through Apple's network. The response doesn't come back through Apple's network, or it was trying to send it over the T-Mobile Starlink partnership. It failed. You try to resend it. It still won't work. So it's not using the Apple network. So maybe just because it's early days and all those problems will get sorted out. And I don't want to say in 3 years from now, because it may be in 18 months or 12 months. But we're not quite there yet at, good, solid cell phone connectivity. We'll continue to hear Spotify on the trail, unfortunately, when it's downloaded at a time, but you're not going to get Spotify streamed on your cell phone for quite some time in the backcountry, thankfully.
I think it's important also
Yep.
to bear in mind that even when this solution works, and let's say you have great coverage, you still have the same problem that you have when you're in coverage here, which is that your cell phone is not bulletproof. Your cell phone has a limited battery, tends to be the same thing that you're going to be using for taking pictures, and possibly listening to Spotify and possibly surfing the web or whatever. And you will use up all your battery. And once that's gone, if you don't have a battery pack, you don't have a secondary method of navigation to get your map down, or not familiar with the trail, it gets dark. If you're silly enough to use a flashlight on your cell phone, but don't do that, please. There's lots of limitations that come with using your mobile device because we want it to do everything. And trust me, I'm guilty as everyone else wanting to do everything with it. But as an emergency communications device, it's going to fail when all of those other things fail. And all those other things will fail when you're needing them the most, really, is what it comes down to.
Without a doubt, a purpose-built device like a personal satellite communicator will always outperform a cell phone. So the big question for many is, do I still need a personal locator beacon, a ZOLEO, and inReach? Well, what I will tell you is PLBs, EPIRBs, ELTs, that whole technology, just because of their existence in the marine and aviation world, are not going anywhere, and they have value for backcountry use. So that's not going anywhere. It's a great solution, but do not count out Iridium, ZOLEO, Garmin. They are building a purpose-built device with a battery life, a size, and to deploy. Those will always be constraints for cell phones, and a purpose-built device like a Garmin inReach or a ZOLEO satellite communicator will always outperform those devices, particularly when you're on marginal, even when you're in cell service, out of cell service, which is extremely tough for a cell phone battery. Those devices will outperform those. So they're not going away. Tracking and two-way communications, I'm going to suggest, and I'm going to challenge you guys to consider essentials. And I'll give you my two primary reasons. Tracking perspective, tracking is really handy. Some of us are out there alone. I know it's not always the best call, but some of us still do it. And having the ability of somebody to keep an eye on your trip plan, even if you're 2 or 3, to see that your trip is still progressing as planned, and being able to report on your progress is helpful. If they don't hear from you and you don't check in as expected, even if you don't trigger an SOS. If you're incapacitated, if you fall off the side of a cliff, and you're not able to trigger the SOS, the tracking can really make the difference. And two-way comms, aside from the benefit of being able to check in and ask for the score of the hockey game on that particularly good hockey game, are really, really valuable for getting information about a rescue. I have never triggered one of these guys for myself. I've triggered them for others about 6 times. And in every instance, had I had a PLB or not a two-way communication method, I either would have been had to stay with the people that needed assistance. And in some cases, it was a really simple trigger SOS and they needed me to stay there. But in others, it was they had a really serious lower body injury. Didn't have the mobility to get to the trailhead, but other people were with them. I was able to relay that information. Parks was able to send a rescue team out, any other person, and I could communicate that back and forth with the Rescue Coordination Center, information that's really valuable. And for you, if you do need the feedback about, yes, we got your message, yes, there's a rescue team, or no, we're going to wait till tomorrow morning because the weather conditions are so poor, is good information to have in that situation. And lastly, redundancy is invaluable. You have a cell phone, even if it has satellite connectivity. Scott talked about battery life, talked about you're using it for you're using Gaia, you're using All Trails, you're using your favorite photo app, and by the time you need it, will you still have a battery? If you want to carry a PLB and a satellite communicator, if you want to carry something in addition to your cell phone, I'll tell you, I've even had conversations on a few treks where one of these was not enough because we were concerned about the party getting separated. So there's an old saying in the military, two is one, one is none. Redundancy is of high value. So even if you think you have cellular connectivity or satellite to cellular connectivity, really reflect on whether you have what you need and where satellite connectivity fits from a satellite communicator. I think that's it. That was a bit of a whirlwind. My contact information is there. I said I didn't want this to be too salesy, but I'm going to do one last plug. If you're interested in trying the Adiona Alert service, you have questions about the Adiona Alert service, if you scan the barcode, the QR code that's on your screen, and I think Scott will share that with the rest of the community after the seminar. We're going to give you 2 months of service for free. You can experience and really see it for yourself and see if it has value for you. We have lots of articles and lots more information on our website, and you've got my email address if you got any questions.
Marvelous. And actually, there are questions. Let's go straight into the thing. How does your system work with ZOLEO and inReach?
Without getting too much into technical stuff, we request your permission when you set up an account with our service. We request your permission to track your location. So with ZOLEO, you need to have the location share service. With Garmin, we use their map share service, which is included in most of the tiers. And we use that location, keep the most recently reported location, and at the same time, we compare it with any active alert issued in Canada and the US. In essence, if you're the blue dot inside the red polygon, we will send you the alert directly to your inReach. A really short alert, a summary of the alert, because we're limited in terms of the number of characters we can send. And then you can decide whether you want more information about the alert or the instructions that the alerting agency has issued. That's the
Okay, so let me get into a little more detail here. So first of all, that implies that I have to make sure I have my tracking on the whole time.
That's correct.
Right? Or at least maybe when I get to camp at night, I can turn it off so I can save battery because I'm not moving it anywhere. I can turn off the tracking portion. But then when I get up in the morning and I go to get my kayak in the water, I turn it back on so that you can continue to follow me through the ocean. And then secondly, so you're providing not only weather alerts, but you said you're also providing other alerts. So is it using the P system, the same system that's used by City of North Van, District of North Van, City of Nelson or whatever to send out alerts as well?
So we use in Canada the Alert Ready network over and above the Environment and Climate Change Canada networks. They are the aggregator and they validate the alerting agency. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that it's vetted and accurate information from a local agency that has expertise. So if the municipality, the province, a federal agency decides to issue an alert to a specific area, they will use it, and they use the Alert Ready network. We will pick up that alert. We get the geo information about the alert, the affected area, and then we do the matching between where our users are and where those alerts are issued.
So it's only the Alert Ready stuff. So I want to make sure it's clear on folks because there's different levels of alerts. So if I have alertable on my phone, for instance, my local city may tell me that the bridge is out, right? But they're not sending that to everyone's cell phone in the entire city. The alert ready one is where they send it to everyone's cell phone within the polygon that they've drawn. And that's the one that you're going to be able to transmit, not necessarily the boil water advisory that they have for one particular neighborhood.
Yes and no.
Okay.
The Alert Ready network is not just the cell phone alerts, it's also the radio,
Okay.
television, media network. So while there are private companies that are selling alerting services to communities, and if your community is elected to use a private company's network to notify about garbage collection delays, water main construction, drinking water advisories, and they elect not to use the Alert Ready, you're not going to get that alert. And in our view, it already creates a tier of what's urgent or safety concern versus community information. But in the majority of cases, whether it's alertable, whether it's one of the other community alert providers, when the community issues the alert, they can elect to send it to just their own distribution list or the distribution list and Alert Ready. And then when it's sent to Alert Ready, they can decide to opt into the wireless emergency of the alerts, the cell phone alerts we receive. So there's something in between that that is more than at the community level only, the municipality or the township distribution list and the wireless emergency alerts on your cell phone.
Thank you. Simon Rosado did say, by the way, that he has attempted and apparently successfully managed to hack with his mini Starlink, and it works great. Of course,
send us pictures, Simon. I want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those things, of course, is it all depends on battery. So if you're going out, batteries tend to be heavy, especially if they're big ones. So it'd be interesting to see like how big a battery it is for an hour's worth of service versus 10 hours worth of service. One of the things that comes to mind about the Starlink Mini, though, that is very much a fixed position type of device, right? Where you are going to take it out once you're pretty much you've stopped moving and you want to have service for the day. It's good, probably not something you're going to be using while you're actively walking. I don't think it's designed for that. But it is something for once you're fixed in a location. So the technology,
the real killer usually is battery life, and particularly on the newer devices like the ZOLEOs, the inReach Mini 2, the battery life and the intelligence that they've built into the device, they won't provide a location update, so they won't use the battery life to communicate with the satellite if you haven't moved. So anytime you turn off your device, you're already limiting some of the benefits of having a satellite communication device in the backcountry, right?
Yeah, and Simon's also mentioning that things that work great for snowmobiles, not necessarily going to work great for when you're on your light hike, right? So
Absolutely.
It's good to have all these options. And as you said, it's going to change. You're right. 18 months from now, we may be in a completely different world. I know we'll be in a completely different world. Satellite to mobile, even when it does pick up, and we're having a lot of discussions about that. Even when it does pick up, and even when we get to the point where there's data and there's voice, and it's just the same as being in a regular town area, we're still going to have to be warning people about the fact that you can't depend on that device, which if you fall down, I've done this, I've destroyed my cell phone by falling onto a rock. It's not hard. They're really not designed to be bulletproof. So we'll have to work on that. Sandra, did you have any other questions, or shall we could also ask other people questions?
Well, I was thinking of our, that was so interesting, JS. Thank you, because it was just so much to share, and it tied in quite nicely with our 3 Ts. I appreciate that, and really good insights for everyone, right? If with the devices they have or might invest in. And I think these are all investments, aren't they? The subscription is in the investment, the alerts are the investment.
Even just learning about your options is an investment, to be honest.
I fully agree. And these first few webinars in our series this summer, to me, are sharing different options for technology and uses of and applications, and how you might invest or not, depending on your capabilities, literally. And there's a few things to think about, and that's different for every outdoor enthusiast. But a lot what came to mind tonight, which you skirted a lot on for obvious reasons, is just that climate readiness. And what's that look like for all of us, and how that's changed so much in the last few years. And we know now we have to look through that lens. We all have to have climate readiness glasses on and think, how does that affect us? We've had other webinars where we've had hikers on that have been stranded by wildfires and plumes of smoke, and thank goodness the helicopters scooped by and took them back to safety. That's not a made-up story. It's a true. You can check out our series. And that climate readiness piece is a biggie. And this ties in really nicely to that, JS. I think you've enlightened everyone, I think, and what a nice offer to share this opportunity for them to give it a go, if you will. I think in conscious time of everybody and respects for that, I think we've got our time in here, and I'd like to ask a few questions. Before I ask the first question to give away, we have 2 prizes to give away tonight. We have 105 hikes in and around southwestern British Columbia by Stephen Hugh. The second edition just started to get sold today. I saw that Stephen was pushing that all over today. So each one of our webinars,
I haven't even seen it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I know there's lots of anticipation around it. Stephen does a wonderful job, and he's a huge supporter of AdventureSmart, which is great. So we're happy to give away a book each one of our webinars, and we have a ZOLEO to do. But I forgot to ask at the very beginning, where's everybody sitting? Can you take just 2 seconds and let me know where you're sitting? If it's
put that in look at the chat section. There's a little picture
in the chat
bubble.
section would be awesome, and just type in where you are. Oh, Paul's in Chilliwack, great. Powell River, North Van. Oh, hi Don. It's just nice for us to get a gist of where people are. And often
it also
they're
works
from
out very
outside of
well.
BC.
It also works out very well because now everyone knows where the chat section is. So when Sandra asks you a question, what I'm going to ask you to do is answer in the chat section. Now, usually it fills up really quickly with your answers. So what we'll do is we'll get in touch with you based on what email that you subscribed to for the original webinar, if you're the winner.
Great. So let's give away Stephen's book for starters. So we'll hook you up with Stephen, and he'll fire that off to you, no problem. Can you tell me how many search and rescue groups we have in the province of British Columbia?
Yes, I can.
Not you, Scott, and not you, JS, either.
Oh.
I don't. It's a yes or no question, people. Why are you putting in numbers? I don't understand.
It's not a yes or no.
She asked you if you can. She didn't ask you what the number is.
But they read between the lines, and they're very good listeners. They're very good listeners. So we see some good numbers there. And
yes, we had the correct number right off the top, which is 78.
We did. Awesome. So we'll make sure we get you sorted. Don't worry about that. And last but not least, and then we'll sign off and thank you for your time. Let's give away that ZOLEO. And it's pretty exciting, which is great to do. And I talked about primary reasons for search and rescue. What was the third most common reason for search and rescue in the province of British Columbia?
I wonder if it'd be helpful going through doing a process of elimination. First one was...
I have faith, Scott. I have faith in our audience. They're not.
I think we need to do some process of elimination.
The process of elimination. Okay, so number one is injury. Number 1 is injury. Number 2 is getting lost or disoriented. And number 3, I do believe we got it right there. Exceeding abilities.
Yes.
Exceeding abilities.
Exceeding your abilities. So thinking you can do something, you can't quite manage it, whether or not that's thinking that you can get up a particular hill, but your legs just aren't there for it, or you think you know where the trail is and you don't actually have any of the resources for it, or you think you have enough time before the sun goes down. You don't.
Good examples, Scott. Good examples. Well, JS, thanks for your time. It was really enlightening. I know you offered up, if anyone has questions, they can reach out to you. So we appreciate your time. Scott, thanks again. We appreciate all the efforts and behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, behind the camera, in front of the camera. Everything you do is greatly appreciated. And to the audience, especially, because when you join us for these, we know you're being considerate of the 3,200 search and rescue volunteers in BC. And we know that we can all lessen the impact on them. We know we can by doing this and so many other things. And that adds to the safety culture in British Columbia. So on behalf of the 3,200 search and rescue volunteers, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming out. Have a great summer. And hopefully we see you at some of our next webinars. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
See you on
Bye-bye.
the trails.
Hey there, adventurers! As you gear up for your next outing, whether just a few hours or a full weekend, keep the AdventureSmart 3 T's in mind. Trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. One key essential? A first aid kit. These kits come in all shapes and sizes, whether you grab a fancy prepackaged one from an outdoor store or play mad scientist and create a custom kit of your own. Just ensure you bring the right stuff, and unless your trail buddy just happens to be a surgeon, ensure you're trained to use it. So don't be unequipped. Follow the AdventureSmart 3 T's and make sure you bring a first aid kit and know how to use it. In an emergency, call 911 and stay put until help arrives. There's no charge for rescue. See you on the trails.